All right, and we're back for another episode of the Department Podcast with Justin, Jesse, Steve, and Joe. Last episode, it was just me and Joe talking about the MLB trade deadline. Steve and Jesse, you guys are back from your trip to San Diego after the Padres also inquired about your rights as well. But now we're shifting gears and moving to the NBA, talking about the bubble, talking about the playoffs. But our lead story, which came out of nowhere 2 days ago, or yesterday really by the time we're recording this, and that is Hall of Fame guard, essentially, Steve Nash, is the new head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. No one saw this coming. There were no rumors. It came out of nowhere. I woke up, saw Woj tweeting about Steve Nash, the Nets. First reaction, I thought he was coming out of retirement to get his ring finally. So, okay. But really, this could go one of two ways. Initially, you think Jason Kidd, and that it could go horribly wrong like Jason Kidd. Or it could be Steve Kerr. That's the other end of the spectrum. It's really all Nash has to do is just manage the egos of his players, and they should be fine.
When the Brooklyn Nets were hiring a coach, there was one box to check on the criteria. Will Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving sign off on it? And the answer was yes. You wanted a third star in Brooklyn. It's not a player.
Oh. Not a player yet.
Yeah. Oh.
Not a player yet. I mean, we'll see. We'll get to that.
Double duty?
Steve Nash. What a hire for the Brooklyn Nets. I know a lot of people are going to hate it. A lot of inexperience. I'm looking at Tyronn Lue. I'm looking at Nick Nurse. I'm looking at Steve Kerr. First year, they brought a championship back home. And I think that this Steve Nash hire has absolutely the potential to raise something to the rafters in Brooklyn.
So my favorite part, well, okay, I have a lot of favorite parts of this signing, all right? Number one, first thing I thought of, okay, what's Jacques Vaughn doing? Yeah. Jacques Vaughn is staying on as the highest paid assistant coach in the league for at least another year.
And that's fine.
Huge win. Win there.
Yeah.
Number two, I was looking at the Nets had this deal pretty much done in May. That's 4 months ago, and nobody leaked Nash as even a potential name for 4 months. I mean, I was fully on the Greg Popovich bandwagon, which they also discussed in May, and then ended up deciding to go with Steve Nash, which, I mean, to me, I love everything about this because, as Justin said, you need a guy who's going to balance personalities. And if anybody is, Nash is so inexperienced. Yeah, I'm really sure Steve Nash doesn't understand the game of basketball because he's a 2-time MVP and was a point guard, for a 7 seconds offense.
Steve Nash knows, first of all, the point guard position better than anybody else that they could have possibly hired.
Yeah.
And Steve Nash knows personalities. Steve Nash has a reputation as a guy who is sort of really good on the psychology end of basketball. And that's what it's all about. And also, you can't forget, I mean, we could praise it for the Kyrie Irving aspect, but Kevin Durant and Steve Nash have a relationship. Steve Nash was involved in Golden State for a few years. He worked with Kevin. And I think that this is a slam dunk hire. And great for Steve Nash because he's going to be able to walk into a situation where, I mean, how much easier could it get for a coach?
Yeah, I think he's the right fit too because he is a good moderator. He has dealt with these larger-than-life personalities before. Like, you've seen him with Kobe. You've seen him with Shaq before. He can get a team together and get them to work on the same page to achieve the one goal, which is getting a ring. So I think it's the perfect hire, too. And like Jesse said, too, having Jacques Vaughn back on the staff, too, for another year as the highest-paid assistant it's just like the icing on the cake right there. It's just it's looking good. It's looking really good in Brooklyn.
You have two head coaches at that point. You have an associate head coach who works really well with Dinwiddie and LeVert and Jared Allen, and a lot of those guys really like him. And then you have Nash for Kyrie and KD, and then also helping with the other guys.
Well, that's what
I was about to say, that Nash is the coach of the two superstars, and Jacques Vaughn is the Jared Allens characters.
The Jared Allen.
Well, that's almost the best way to balance it. You have your developmental coach who can manage, the rest of the team, and then Nash can just handle the superstars, because that way then he can focus all his time and energy on making them happy and game planning around them and just focusing all his attention on them, because really that's all superstars want is the attention on them and making sure they're taken care of as well as the team winning.
Well, and that's kind of what the Clippers are doing as well, with Doc Rivers mostly, I think, speaking on Kawhi and Paul George, and Tyronn Lue kind of covering the rest of the team. I love this hire. The only coach I think that could have been better was probably Popovich, but we don't really know his availability. We don't know how much longer he wants to coach. If Nash works, you have a coach for the next 10, 15 years.
Plus,
Popovich is probably, going to be on his way out necessarily in the next probably, I would say, 2 to 3 years.
Well, it's
this
almost
gives
like
you stability throughout.
if they brought in Pop, you're almost tying them to the contracts of Kyrie and KD, and once they're done,
Then you would blow
it
it
just
up.
falls
you clean
apart
slate
again.
and restart.
Yeah.
Nash, like you said, he could kind of go into that Kerr era where they had a season of rebuilding, where they lucked out and got the second overall pick with, Curry and Clay being down. But Kerr's going to be at Golden State at this point for as long as he wants.
Yeah.
Like he earned his right to be there. And Nash very well could earn his right to be the Nets coach for however long.
Long time. I think he's going to be there for a long time. From past KD, past Kyrie's time in Brooklyn, whenever either they leave or they retire. I think he's Brooklyn in and out. That's it. Nothing else. Just Brooklyn.
Here's where I think, and I'm going to parallel them to the Milwaukee Bucks right now, because the Milwaukee Bucks, we'll get to them later on, but a lot of the focus right now is on coaching in Milwaukee, and a lot of the focus right now is on the fact that Milwaukee doesn't truly have a closer. And with Brooklyn right now, I think Steve Nash, if anyone's going to put his team in a position to get a bucket at the end of the game, it's going to be Steve Nash.
Well, and as of right now, the Nets have 4 closers on their team.
That was my
Dinwiddie's a closer. LeVert is a closer. Kyrie is one of the most clutch players of all time.
Kyrie is a
closer. And Kevin Durant is also, a 7-foot 3-point shooter. So.
And that was my second point to oppose them to the Milwaukee Bucks. Coaching, closers. That's what I think puts them at the top of the East next year.
And the Steve Nash hire, it kind of continues the trend that we've seen in baseball a little bit more. People with no coaching experience are just giving the keys to franchises who are ready to go just to be a leader rather than knowing the X's and O's and, building their resume. Look at like Nick Nurse. He literally was a G League coach for the longest time, and built and took his lumps that way. Budenholzer took his lumps through, the San Antonio organization. Eric Spoelstra was literally an intern cutting film for the Miami Heat for however long, and those are all great coaches. And now we're starting to see people just step in, like Aaron Boone, Carlos Beltran was supposed to happen. People with no experience just going right into it.
Well, it's communication. It's the guys.
Yeah, and I don't like this narrative of there were other better coaches per se, because I completely disagree. If you told me I could take a flyer on Steve Nash or try to see if Tyronn Lue works, give me Steve Nash. If you told me I could take Steve Nash or Mark Jackson, that's not a question.
Yeah.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Well, it's almost like veteran players. What they are after a while. Like you have enough tape on them that their play style. Same for coaches. Like what you're getting with certain coaches. And yeah, who knows what Sean Marks had conversations with, Pop behind closed doors. We'll never know, like if they said he's coming there, if not, how long he's going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. But like you said, Steve Nash, if it doesn't work out, okay, it just didn't work out. But if you bring in a Tyronn Lue or whoever at that point, they aren't the best of coaches. And then the minute things start to go wrong, it'll blow up 10 times worse because they were a failed coach or a worse coach somewhere else.
Yeah, I think the people that are complaining more are like old school basketball fans in a way, just thinking that it should be like a coach that actually coaches the team and not a player. But they need to learn how to adapt to the new style that former players are getting in the groove of being a coach in this league. It doesn't have to be some old 50, 60-year-old guy who has studied basketball and has won NCAA division titles and all this crap.
Who's been a coach since the 90s and still hasn't won anything, but is still a coach in the league.
Instead, you get a player who knows the game inside and out, knows the psychology of the game, knows about the players' emotions and everything involved in that. And you get that as your head coach. I think that's just as good or even better, honestly.
And really,
and Nash has connections to Brooklyn. Him and Marks were in Phoenix at the same time. I mean, they talked. They're friends. They have a good relationship together. So, as far as I'm concerned, this hire from out of nowhere makes the most sense out of anything that could have been in play.
And really, for me, I said earlier, could I go one of two ways: Jason Kidd or Steve Kerr. Oh God, it could be, Steve Kerr. That's remained to be seen. But I really don't think he'll hit Jason Kidd level of just disaster because one, Kidd was 5 months removed from playing at that point, so he still had a player's mentality, and he didn't know how to manage a team. He knows how to yell at a team and get them, for a quick bucket in a huddle, but not anything further than that. Steve Nash, like we said earlier, he's been around basketball for the 5+ years since he's retired. With the Warriors organization, like I think he was like a player development coach or something. Like he was staying in the game of basketball, so he was able to learn from a pretty good coaching staff and organization, how to adapt to the current basketball way and manage a super team.
Yeah, and I think Nash being removed from the game more than Kidd, and also I think being a different person. When Kidd was the coach of the Nets, I could feel it firsthand. It felt like Kidd wanted to be in charge of everything. He wanted to be a star coach. He wanted to be on the front of the Sports Illustrated covers with the team. He wasn't taking a backseat role, and being yeah, no, it's important for these guys, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett. It's important to get those guys involved. But he wanted to make himself really big in that aspect. I don't see Nash doing that because that's not even who he was as a player.
Yeah. No.
Well, that's the thing too. He had to manage, Amari Stoudemire and Sean Marion, and he still took a back seat to it. And that team it worked pretty well for that team. Granted, they didn't win anything, but he was able to be, blend into the background, and the team had success
and win MVPs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was an out of nowhere move, but it almost seems like it was the right move, and especially with Jacques Vaughn still there, obviously he got the stamp of approval from Kyrie and KD to keep him on the staff. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure if they didn't want him on the staff, he wouldn't be on the staff now. So
no.
Good move for the Nets, honestly.
Yeah, all around. Happy for them. That'd be nice.
It's crazy what a good front office does for a team. It's crazy. If you have a good front office, your team is always trying to get better and always trying to do new things.
I 100% agree.
100% I mean, look at. I mean, I know we're going to talk about this, but look at Miami right now. Miami 2 years ago was looked at as they're going nowhere fast. They kept themselves flexible. They kept their nose to the grindstone, drafting second rounders, drafting high potential guys, and developing them. And now look, they're looking like they could be a championship contender.
Yeah, so
the most important thing in the NBA period is the front office.
Any sport, I'd even say.
So let's stick with the Heat then.
Oh,
they're up 2-0 on the Bucks after getting gifted a game. It seemed like.
Whoa. I'm going to stop you right there.
All right, go for it, Clark.
There was no gift here and there. The fouls in that game, both sides of the ball. This is coming from a Heat fan. Coming both sides of the ball. It was insane. Against the Bucks, against the Heat, the refs were horrible during that game. It looked like that NJAC game that you guys were on the call for. Jesse, I know, was on the call for sure.
Which one? There were about 50 of those.
I'd say, what was that? It was last year, sometime last year. The really bad one.
TCNJ.
Yes, that one. It looked like that.
What a classic.
What a classic. But back to better basketball, I guess. It was just back and forth. Even the play before that. Let's just go to those last two plays of the game. You got the 3-point shot, Goran Dragic up there. It doesn't sniff him. Just has his arms up, and they call the foul on the 3-pointer. Yes, he maybe leaned an inch in, if that, but there was no need for a foul to be called there. I would agree then that I guess, honestly, they kind of had to do the same for the Heat in a way.
I think they made up for the call.
It was a makeup foul.
That's what they did.
Because when Jimmy Butler released the ball and Giannis lightly tapped him on his right hip, the ball was a good 2 feet release from Butler at that point.
Ball was gone.
You could have Goldberg spear tackled Butler, and it was not impacting the angle of the shot that it was going in or not.
But it wasn't gifted just because of that previous play. If that previous play didn't happen before, that 3-pointer that Goran Dragic didn't touch him,
then the Bucks aren't in it.
Yeah, then I agree that they gifted the Heat. The Bucks aren't in it at all. You're right, because then he hits all 3
because he hit all 3 free throws and tied it,
Yeah, so it was just their way of making up for that. I don't think it was gifted, though, just because. I think it was just a mess up.
A makeup call is almost a gift at the same time, because they don't have to. If they're trying to make it right.
They tied the game.
I don't think it was a gift because it was just a badly officiated game.
Exactly.
They didn't know if they wanted to swallow the whistle or call everything.
So bad.
I mean, if you want to say that they're gifting the Heat anything, I would look at Jimmy Butler's free throw numbers. That's the main argument you can make. But that's Jimmy Butler's game. That's what he's doing.
He drives to the basket and takes the hard foul.
Yeah, because he's not a good shooter.
Exactly.
So he has to get his points that way for the most part.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't a perfectly officiated game by any means. And from an entirely neutral standpoint, because my favorite team isn't either of those. I was just watching to enjoy the basketball. It just felt like a badly officiated game. It felt like it could kind of go both ways. I felt like Miami was the better team, and Miami won. So I can't really complain too much. I just think the refs need to kind of get on the same page.
And there were too many fouls. If you watch the game from start to finish, there were too many fouls called on the threes. Like I have watched
fouling jump shooters has been so bad this playoffs. They're calling it in the OKC Houston game. They're calling it in the Milwaukee Miami series. They're calling it in the Clippers Nuggets now. Yeah. They need to have a meeting about this.
Yeah,
because they are doing way too many fouls for jump shooters. Way too many.
It was 3-pointers. Like during the Heat Bucks game 2 game. It was like at least 7 or 8 fouls on 3-point shots. I've never seen that before in my life. That many in one game on just 3-pointers.
Now, gifted or not for that win for the Heat, they won regardless. And it shifts the momentum drastically into the Heat's favor. 2-0, not a big deficit to come back from, but it's definitely a deficit enough. If the Bucks lose this series,
it's done.
We very well could have seen, that game 2 almost end the Bucks as we know it and potentially end Giannis's tenure with Milwaukee.
Well, the Bucks, they can complain about the refs all they want, but there's no excuse to hold Jimmy Butler to 13 points and still lose. Absolutely ridiculous. There's no excuse for that. And the Bucks, the problem with the Bucks is that it's not with Giannis, and Giannis is certainly not great, and he needs to take control of the game. He's been very passive, especially on defense, blaming the coach. I don't love that. He really needs to take control, but it's the fact that they really didn't surround him with a legitimate star. A regular season, they're going to hit these shots very easily, Yeah. But you get into the playoffs, you're going to need legitimate shooters. And the Bucks didn't do that. And the Bucks are to blame if Giannis walks.
Come on, but they gave him an all-star, Chris Middleton.
Chris Middleton is a fake all-star.
I'm done with that. I don't want to hear that.
He's not real. I've been on that train since before this year started. Chris Middleton, sure, he's a nice regular season player. Is he maybe a regular season all-star? Sure, I guess in the way that DeMar DeRozan was kind of a regular season all-star. Like, it's not, cool. He puts up some regular season numbers. Yeah. But he doesn't really impact the game. And it feels like when an all-star is touching the ball and shooting, I shouldn't think in my head, oh, God, that's not good. Every time Middleton shoots in the bubble, I'm like, that's not going in.
I want to go back to the quote that was said earlier in the week that Giannis needs a Jordan. I think it's the opposite. Giannis is the Jordan. He needs a Pippen, if we're being honest. He is the Jordan of his team. Joe, you're shaking your head right now. Tell me why you disagree with that.
What Jordan had the ability to do is that when you needed a stop and when you needed a bucket, Jordan was there.
Who's Giannis? Are you kidding me right now? Yeah.
Late in the game.
Oh, okay.
Finishing. A mid-range that he can go to anywhere on the floor at any time.
Giannis isn't mid-range. Giannis is drive to the bucket and fine. And
What happens when they build the wall?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. The Bucks should be able to hit those shots considering they have shooters.
That's why,
but they don't.
Number one, just because Giannis isn't Jordan doesn't mean that he's terrible. Doesn't mean that I'm going to rip on him.
Of course.
Not Jordan, and for that reason. But number two goes back to my original point. It's the Bucks' fault. You can't surround him without a facilitator. Not really a facilitator on that offense. Nothing really even remotely close to that.
See, but the thing is, if Giannis is a quote-unquote Pippen, where can he go that he has a Jordan?
I 100% agree with that.
He's better. He's the best player on any team that you put him on.
Literally about to win back-to-back MVPs. Literally.
Warriors.
He's
better than everyone on the Warriors.
He's better than everybody on the Warriors by far right now.
Yeah, he's literally.
By far and away.
Steph Curry's been around for a while, so I guess we'll see. But
okay.
All right.
Steph Curry was showed up by KD, and at that point, KD could still maybe be better than Giannis. That was a legit discussion before. So when KD comes back, we can have that conversation again. But as of right now, Giannis you can't put him lower than top 3.
Can't put him lower than top 1, or you like literally.
You can make the argument for Kawhi because he turns on in the playoffs.
You can make arguments, but they're not true.
Giannis feels different because when most guys have been, 25 and are leading the number 1 team in the league, they've been to the playoffs numerous times before. Giannis hasn't, and he's never led his team past the second round.
And
I mean,
anyone you can say that for anyone on the Bucks roster except for maybe Kyle Korver.
So at that point, are you guys almost writing the Bucks off against the Heat then?
If they lose tonight,
it's over.
It's done. I don't care if they win the next 2 after that. It's done. The Heat are going to get at least one of them after that.
I mean, they're not Golden State.
I will say this. Whoever wins this series is not making the finals.
I can
agree.
I can almost agree with that too, honestly.
I think if either of these teams makes it to the finals, they're not winning they're definitely not winning it.
If the Celtics advance, I'd say the winner of this series wins. But if the Raptors advance, Raptors are going all the way.
Both teams cook them, I think.
See, I think
I have more faith in the Raptors than the Celtics.
For Miami, if Miami moves forward, the worst matchup for them is Toronto by far. But if Milwaukee moves forward and Boston moves forward, I think Boston is going to beat them because Boston has isolation scorers. They have people who can hit mid-ranges. They have people who can close the game and also hit mid-ranges, in the middle of the second quarter when you still need to be scoring. I think the Bucks just go on these huge lapses where it's like I feel like they haven't had a good shot in minutes.
I think Toronto's almost a lock to get to the finals in a way then.
No. Because I don't think they're going to beat Boston.
Wow, really?
I mean, are we watching 2 different series?
No, we're watching the same series, but I don't count out Toronto. You just don't. They have a great team all around. I don't know. I don't know.
They're one flukish inbound away from being down 3-0.
I definitely would not call that a fluke inbound. That was a pretty great play set up by Kyle Lowry.
It's a once in about a 1 in 100. I mean,
Toronto did that last year with Kawhi on the crazy mid-range, and they ended up winning the finals.
I wouldn't count out Toronto yet. I just wouldn't.
I would not count out Toronto, especially since they're probably the best coached team in the bubble.
I'm just not a fan of Boston's core. Like, I don't think that's a championship team. You know,
I think it could be a championship team maybe in a year or two, but I still do think they might be a little too young, especially if on the Western Conference side it's LeBron and AD or Kawhi and Paul George. That Boston team, I think, would have a lot of problems.
But I think you could say the same about the Heat. I was
about to say that too, Joe.
Say about the Heat, you could say really about the Celtics.
I agree.
I disagree because the Heat have Bam Adebayo and the Celtics have Daniel Tice. That's a pretty big difference for me.
That's the one difference, but other than that, they're very, very similar.
Well, I think the Heat play better team basketball, and the Celtics
and better
play
defense,
really good
too.
isolation.
If you see the
Heat are a much better defensive team.
Yeah.
Who has the best player on those two squads? Boston.
Probably Boston.
Probably Boston.
It's usually what it comes down to with things.
But I think Boston has
That's
the
not
best
what
player.
That's not what it comes down to.
I think Miami has the next best three.
That's fair.
That is fair.
So
that's not what it comes down to because the Bucks have the best player right now against the Heat, and they're down 0-2.
By far the best player in the series.
Yeah.
But then again, the Heat probably have the next best three.
They have Jimmy, they have Bam, they have Goran, they have Duncan Robinson, they have all those guys just chilling right there.
Well, the East is definitely a lot tighter and a lot different than we early
I said this a month
anticipated.
ago. The East is going to be competitive and it's going to be fun to watch.
Hey guys, next year the East is also going to have the Brooklyn Nets added in.
Nash.
That is very true.
But would we sacrifice Miami for the Heat?
What?
Miami back next year if they lose their guy. You know what I'm saying? You might trade one.
They're not trading Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy loves Miami. Miami loves Jimmy.
Miami, yeah.
Milwaukee. I misspoke.
Milwaukee, okay.
I think the only way Milwaukee trades Giannis is if he comes in and says, under no circumstances, absolutely none, we could win a championship. It doesn't matter. I'm leaving.
It would have to be a Paul George situation.
Yeah, they would have to trade him. They would still get much more back than –
Didn't you have something like some trade lined up that like it's like 40 draft picks to get Giannis to Brooklyn somehow?
Oh, well, it was the only one that could happen to Brooklyn. I didn't make it. Matt Brooks made it. He's a great Nets writer. He's fantastic. He does all the trades and stuff.
I think Giannis plays next season with the Bucks. And then he just goes free agency, plain and simple. I think that's it.
If he goes, well, this is the thing. If he goes to free agency, there's going to be a sign-in trade. Because he's going to want his super max money.
Of course.
And then he's going to want to be traded to another team because he's still going to want his money. The Bucks that can still then, get at least something back.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the OKC Thunder being just an inbound pass away from almost taking out the Rockets, as well as the Clippers and the Nuggets series. So stay tuned. We'll be All right, and we're back for the second part of this episode of the Department Podcast. So before the break, we talked about the Bucks, the East, Steve Nash going to the Nets, but we're going to transition over to the Western Conference. I want to start with the Houston Rockets, Oklahoma City Thunder series. Coming into this season, a lot of teams, had no faith in the Thunder. Chris Paul's gotten there just to get, out of Houston because James Harden didn't want to play with him anymore, basically. And, he took them to Game 7 and was literally one pass away from potentially sending them home from the bubble. Now what really is the big question for the Thunder moving forward?
Well, the biggest question that I can think of, especially now, is Chris Paul going to be there at the start of next season? Because there were people who already thought, oh, he's not staying there for the year. They're going to trade him. Well, before, Chris Paul didn't really have any value because of his massive contract.
Yeah.
I think at this point, with what he's done with Oklahoma City, he's played well enough that you would still have to give something up for him. You can't just say to Oklahoma City, we'll take on his contract, and that's pretty much all we're going to give you. I think now you have to at least add in a first-round pick with some protections, but
I think you'd keep him, honestly.
I think they should trade him.
Really?
His value is never going to be higher. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's getting 36. He's going to be next season. There's only so much you can do with Chris Paul leading this team. I think this was their ceiling with Chris Paul as the major facilitator, going 7 games and maybe even cracking into the second round. But the question is, if they do get rid of Chris Paul, does Billy Donovan stay? There's a lot of talk that he might want to leave, but I mean, we'll see what goes on in the offseason, but I think they might shake things up. But I say you get a good pick for Chris Paul or 2, and you build around all the young talent they got.
Yeah, you swayed me a little bit. I agree. Get younger a little bit with that. I was going to say keep him because he was a big part of this team, and he obviously contributed to their success during the season and postseason somewhat. But I agree now that you should trade him. I think get younger. Like you said, he's on the wrong side of 30, Joe. You did say that. Get younger. Get at least a first round. Get younger.
The thing is, especially now, I think there are, off the top of my head, at least 2 teams that should at least call about Chris Paul. And that's the Philadelphia 76ers, if they decide that they're, keeping the core, and the Milwaukee Bucks to try to help Giannis.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as I'm concerned, both of those teams should be on the phone gauging the interest immediately. The Chris Paul contract is still not a good one. It's never gonna be a good one. But if he has another year like this year for Milwaukee or for Philly, that pushes them into Philly. It moves them up definitively into at least a second-round team, which you can argue if Ben Simmons is there, maybe they're a second-round team anyway. Milwaukee, it gives them a shot creator and a closer, and who was statistically the best clutch player in the league this year. And that's what the Bucks don't have.
I just feel like that's not enough for the Bucks in a way.
It is.
It is enough.
It's enough if Giannis continues to improve.
It's going to force Giannis. I think it's going to make Giannis at least consider staying if they make this move and go all out for him next year.
The main thing is if you're trading away, if you're the Bucks, and I haven't done the numbers on this, so I'm not positive of this yet. But if you trade away, Eric Bledsoe and some expiring contracts and, a first-round pick, and that gets you Chris Paul, and you have Chris Paul, Giannis, Middleton, and you're still able to keep Brook Lopez, I think you're good. Are you better than Brooklyn if they're at full health? Maybe not. Are you better than, Miami? Probably.
It definitely would
probably get pushed to the second or first team.
It would definitely put them over Toronto then.
If Giannis doesn't go to Toronto and stays in Milwaukee and Toronto just brings back this team, yeah, they are better with Chris Paul than Toronto is. I definitely agree.
I just don't see them clicking. I don't see Chris Paul taking sort of that back seat kind of role with Giannis as the main guy.
Well, he did it with Harden.
He is. That's honestly the Chris Paul ceiling is the best backseat guy you can possibly.
He is.
He's a great number 2.
I don't think he wants that.
Great number 2.
I think he's more okay with it going forward. Another team that I think that should get interested in him but has absolutely nothing they can give up is the Lakers. The Lakers need another playmaker.
That'd be fun.
They need a shot creator and a playmaker and a guy that can make threes, but they have no assets.
That's a good fit for me, though. I think the Lakers is a better fit than the Bucks, just because you already have a bunch of star power there on the Lakers, and you put him on the Bucks. He's not the Pippen or the Jordan you're looking for. He's like the Ron Harper or the Steve Kerr that's on that team. He's not the Pippen.
Lakers cap hell.
Oh, it would
absolutely would.
but they already are going to be anyway as long as LeBron is.
They would
there.
almost have to attach like Kuzma and then draft
They
picks
would,
every
they
other
would
year
have,
for the
well,
next
they can't.
like 10 years.
They have no draft picks.
But that's what I'm saying. They would have.
Well, no, they could only. I think OKC would trade Chris Paul if you just gave them one or two. I definitely think they would. The thing was going into the year, especially, teams didn't want to give up compensation. They wanted to just be like, yeah, we will take this guy, but we're not giving you anything back. You're welcome. We're taking his contract.
Yeah.
That's not enough anymore. And at the same time, it benefits OKC kind of trading him because then you can make SGA the point guard. I mean, he was playing the 2 a lot this year, but his future really should be at point. And then Lou Dort should be at the 2. That's really what they should be doing forward. And another player that I can't believe they didn't trade on the expiring contract that they had is Danilo Gallinari, who also, if you trade Chris Paul, you might be able to throw him in if you do a sign-and-trade deal. If you throw Gallinari in with Chris Paul and get him to Milwaukee, that's a different team. That's a whole different team. That's one of the best stretch fours we have in the game today, and one of the probably what I would say is the best pure point guard we've seen since maybe Kidd. Probably Kidd.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking true number one, yeah. No, no doubt about that. If Milwaukee, I see that this is really their only path to being like still favorites in the East. I'm not going to say they'd be hopeless, but I still think if you get Chris Paul and Giannis, I think that would still be enough to make bettors happy going into the 2021 season.
And if you can keep Middleton, you create a fake big 3.
Well, the pressure's off Middleton at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Middleton
you're
can
good.
play freely. He can be a spot-up guy if you need him to be. He'll be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
OKC moving forward, I think they're going to embrace this rebuild even more. They have so many picks. And they can get even more.
You know, it's almost like since they made it to the playoffs, you know, it takes them out of the lottery. You know, it was almost a blessing in disguise then because they made Chris Paul look a hell of a lot better and more valuable. So now they can almost embrace the rebuild a little bit more. And they gave their fans a nice little playoff run they were able to enjoy. But, you know, on the other side of things, you know, the Rockets, you know, barely escaped, and now they get to go play the Lakers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Rockets will get a series of fully healthy Russell Westbrook. Yikes. I mean, we'll see. But, I mean, this matchup is, I mean, in a way favorable, especially for a guy like James Harden. If they
have no perimeter defenders.
If they play if they play to Harden's strength and let Harden, shoot without the assist, ISO ball, we could see him have a big series. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but all they really have to do is let Harden shoot, let Harden play Harden-style basketball. It's not Russell Westbrook-style basketball. Play Harden-style basketball and play transition defense. If they can do that, it's a series.
It'll be fun. It's not going to be a wrap for the Rockets, but it'll be at least competitive. I agree with that. But you got Lakers in 5 or 6 games in this series max. Like
I've got Lakers in 6. I think Houston feels good about themselves. It might be like a 1-1 split, and Houston feels good. But then I think the Lakers rip off like 3 straight. Maybe Houston has a strong 3-point shooting night. But also, if the Lakers have a strong 3-point shooting night, there's nothing Houston can do. There's no way for them to come back.
And really, if the Lakers play into the advantage they have of Anthony Davis, you know, taking on any remote –
Tucker.
Yeah, they have no bigs. So if they really wanted to, if they game plan, they could just force feed Anthony Davis in the post, and he could literally just go to town.
The whole game. And then if you switch it over to someone else, and it's a mismatch somewhere else, and it's just
it goes back to Jesse's biggest thing is that Anthony Davis has to play center.
I was just about to say that. It's is he going to play the center, and is he going to bang in the low post every possession if that's where the mismatch is? Or does he start, taking his 18-foot mid-ranges? Does he start taking his three-pointers? If he goes in and decides, I am going to dominate this series from the paint, I am going to gash them, they're already tired.
Yeah.
Like, they're running on empty already, and the Lakers have been sitting back. So I think Game 1 is going to tell us a lot of how this series goes, because if Anthony Davis isn't taking advantage of them in Game 1 in the paint, this has the potential to be a long series for the Lakers that they don't like, that really hurts them because their two best players on Houston is in the backcourt. The Lakers' weakest part of their team by far is the backcourt. They have nobody back there.
I would like to go back to February 6th, 2020. I don't know if anyone remembers, but this is when the Rockets really debuted the small ball lineup for the first time. And they did it in Los Angeles. And Jesse, I don't know, do you remember the result of what happened in that game?
I believe Houston, did they get destroyed?
Houston torched them.
They torched them, yes.
Houston was outstanding.
Yeah.
Lakers really had no defensive response to the small ball lineup.
Yeah. That's going to be a problem going forward.
That should
especially
scare people.
Houston is a much better matchup with the Lakers than they are with the Clippers. I don't think they could hold a chance against the Clippers. But the Lakers put around, in their backcourt, these defensive guys where none of them play good defense.
No.
I mean, you cannot put Rondo out there. He literally makes the team worse.
Literally.
Avery Bradley opting out was huge for them.
That's what I was about to say. That the Rockets MVP for the series is Avery Bradley.
Avery Bradley not being there. It's huge. Yeah. It is. It's massive. I mean, I think you'd have to put Caruso out there for like 25, 30 minutes.
Caruso,
he's your only defender who plays with any hustle. Like, I don't understand how Kentavious Caldwell-Pope plays defense like he's an offensive superstar. Like, he's like, yeah, I don't have to play defense because I'm so good on the other end. But also, he's not good on the other end.
I will say this, that a lot of people I've been seeing are still giving tremendous praise to James Harden on his defense, just cherry picking a few highlights. He still was not great in that Thunder series, and that's just a myth I like to dispel right here, right now.
So my thing on Harden is, it's not that he's a bad defender. He's a good post defender, but he's a shooting guard. You're a good post defender, but you're also 6'6". So realistically, you should be a better perimeter defender than you are a post defender. Because if Anthony Davis is on James Harden and James Harden's their best post defender, Davis should be destroying him. He has 6 inches on him.
Yeah. So then looking at across the other series, right? Clippers, Nuggets.
Yeah,
it's a wash. It's a wash.
It's a wash. It's
over.
a wash.
30 over.
You can say, Denver didn't shoot as great as they usually do last night, and they're tired, but I don't really care.
That's the thing. They're tired.
Doesn't matter.
When are they going to get their legs back under
Yeah.
them? Even if it takes them 2 games to get their legs back under them, cool. They're down 2-0 to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George.
They have no one to
Exactly.
stop Kawhi Leonard. Have fun, enjoy it.
They're down to Kawhi Leonard. They're not down to Paul George.
Watch a movie. I don't the series is just irrelevant. I don't know.
I mean, even through the first, I stopped watching once they went down by 20. But in the first quarter, Nikola Jokic was making passes like prime Steve Nash. No looks, full on, out of post hook passes, these insane passes. And Kawhi missed his first 3 mid-ranges. And they were still only up by 1. I was like, if Kawhi is missing his shots and Jokic is doing as much as he physically can, and Jamal Murray is making his shots, and you're not beating them the way Dallas was, when Luka was making his shots and Kristaps, and they were convincing you that they were good enough to beat them. Denver does not do that.
No.
I gotta say, Kawhi is putting himself right back into the conversation of best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
There was possibly some doubt, but no matter where he is on the floor, you need a bucket. He's there. Like the guy's so good in these situations.
He's very versatile. Very versatile.
I think it's like going under, reported too. I think to a degree of how much he's carrying them. Like he is
carrying them more than he carried Toronto last year.
By far. I think everybody's kind of in agreement that if Kawhi stayed in Toronto, it would be better. Like they would be a better team than the Clippers. Paul George has had his troubles. He's gotten better as of late. He has been hitting more shots.
I don't trust him. I still don't trust Paul George.
Well, that's the thing though. But you still feel really good about the Clippers going into the finals, though, because of Kawhi.
Because of Kawhi.
He's one of those players that if you go in with him, like, okay, when the Raptors were up on the Warriors in the finals, but you heard KD was coming back, people were like, okay, well, this is the swing. This is it. Yeah, they might be down, but KD's back, so good luck, Toronto. And if he doesn't get hurt, they probably win. They probably win those finals.
Probably.
So Kawhi is on that level of just if you have this guy on the floor, no matter who else is with him, you feel really good because he can take over a game.
I just don't know how much longer Kawhi can do this, carrying a team on his own. Like,
this is the first time he's really had to do it.
And he's doing a great job. And he's doing a great job.
And he did get to sit the regular season a lot. So
and then he got 7 months off.
And he got 7 months off. So
that is true.
That's good, but I also agree the long-term health of Kawhi can be scary. Because in 3 years down the road, if he decides he's done, because Kawhi is just like, I'm done. I've won my rings. I've done everything. Whatever. It's not the craziest thing to think. He's one of the quietest guys in the sport.
Well, that's the thing. It's like once he accomplishes all he wants to, he could be the type of player like, all right, peace out.
And if he leaves and the Clippers, let's say somehow the Clippers didn't win a championship, if he leaves, that's one of the worst trades in the history of the NBA. Because you gave up SGA and you gave up about 6 or 7 first-round picks.
Yeah, over a 14-year period almost.
Yes.
Yeah, it's bad.
So
but on the flip side, if they do win the championship, then it's all worth it.
It's all worth it.
It's all worth it.
Absolutely. 110%, it's all worth it.
Then real quick before we wrap up, predictions for each conference finals. Who you got the matchup being?
Give me Clippers, Lakers in the West.
I think we all have Clippers, Lakers, I'm going to say.
I don't want to make a prediction on that yet. I need to see how the Lakers play against Houston. I need to see it. Okay. And then East, give me Boston, Miami, I think maybe. If Toronto wins against the Celtics next game and they have all the momentum, I think it's Toronto. But if Boston wins one more game, Toronto's buried. It's over for them.
Go ahead, Joe.
Clark, please.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Lakers, Clippers, for sure. That's my lock. Give me Miami, Toronto. I'm sticking with Toronto. I have faith in that Toronto team. I don't like them, but I have faith in that Toronto team.
Clark, I'm in the same boat with you. Toronto, Miami for the East, and then the Battle of LA for the West.
Word, Joseph?
Give me Heat. Easy. Give me Boston. Give me the Clippers. You know what?
Don't.
No, I'm going to do it.
You're going to do it? All right.
I'm going to do it.
Oh, baby.
Clippers, Rockets.
Wow.
I think the Clippers would love that. The Clippers would absolutely love that.
They built a team to beat the other team, and they don't even.
The Rockets built a team to beat the 2017 Warriors, and the 2017 Warriors aren't playing anymore. It's 2020.
If you had to pick the Nuggets or the Rockets, you're obviously going to go Rockets, so I can't be too upset about that. But to advance. But hey, I like the pick, Joe. I like it. I do.
Yeah, well, that's all the time we got for this episode. Coming up on the schedule, we have a wrestling recap, probably will drop Sunday, and then probably either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, we'll be dropping an NFL kickoff preview. So make sure to stay tuned for that. So Clark, make sure you tell everybody where they can listen and watch us.
Yes, sir. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You guys know the drill. We hit the 30 subscribers that Justin wanted. If we get to 100 subscribers by Christmas, I said I'm doing the worm. If we get to 120, Justin's gonna do the 2C slide.
What? No.
Yep.
Yep, that is what was agreed on.
120 subscribers by New Year's. Justin will do the 2C slide.
You guys are making bot accounts tonight, then I guess.
or which one do you want to do? The 2C slide or the WAP dance?
I'll do the Tootsie slide.
Yeah.
So, subscribe to us on YouTube. We have plenty of content planned, like Justin just said. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe on Spotify. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, @department_pod. We really appreciate you guys listening. We'll see you in the next episode.